hot seat questions for you too. But
Why
I'm gonna
not?
see. Let me make sure that we're showing up on LinkedIn. One second, Roger.
Oh, of course.
Okay, we are live. We are live. Happy Friday, everyone. And thank you for tuning in. I don't know about where you guys are right now. I am here in Huntsville, Alabama. It's been a little chilly, a little winterish the past few days. It actually did snow here recently. Yes, it does snow in Alabama, and it got very icy. So don't believe the hype. It actually does snow sometimes in the South. But again, welcome. Thank you for joining me, everyone, today. I am very excited about my guest today. I'm excited about this interview overall. Roger Caesar. Roger is not just someone who I'm connected to in Toastmasters. Roger is someone who I call a friend, and I am very, very glad to know him. So without further ado, I am going to give him a proper introduction. So let me get my bio here. Thought I had it up. Roger Caesar is a global sensation. As an internationally renowned professional speaker, he has been touching hearts and changing lives across the world, giving over 3,000 speeches and hundreds of workshops. An unprecedented 5-time district speech champion, Roger has graced stages from TEDx to placing top 3 at the 2021 World Champion of Public Speaking, taking countries by storm, always leaving his audiences wanting more. As a successful entrepreneur, he has been running a family business in the logistics industry that was started by his father over 40 years ago. That is tremendous. He is always looking for ways to engage and contribute within his community. He also co-hosts a podcast, Great Convos, every Monday with fellow speaking champion Alexander Matt. I hope I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Forgive me. Tune in to LinkedIn or Facebook to watch the show with both of them. After a decade of inspiring and motivating on stages and in corporate offices, Roger founded Caesar Empire Speaking and Coaching. As a coach, he is elevating others to find their voices. As a trainer, he unleashes the art of communication. And as a speaker, he connects through memorable stories and powerful messages. Roger approaches everything he does with hard work and positive enthusiasm, truly believing, don't wait for the world to recognize your greatness. Live it and let the world catch up to you. I'm so excited to introduce my friend, Roger Caesar.
What's going on? What's going on, Rokita? So glad to be here with you this beautiful Friday here in Canada.
How is the
No
weather
snow,
there right now?
no snow right now. Beautiful blue skies here, and it's not too bad outside. Not too bad.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, before we go into the interview, I know everyone is waiting for this. They want to hear your insights, your advice on what it takes to make it to the top in speech competitions, but also how to master speechcraft as a whole. Before
Mm,
we get into that, I wanted to start this off in a fun way. So
okay.
I have some hot seat questions, rapid fire questions I'm going
Oh
to
wow.
ask you. So we're gonna learn more about Roger really fast.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, here we go. Chocolate or vanilla ice cream?
Chocolate.
Okay. In the circus, do you want to be a tightrope walker or do you want to swing on a trapeze?
Wow. Swing on a trapeze.
Okay. Batman or Superman?
Oh, Batman.
I agree. Okay, I'm biased. Uh, jerk chicken or curry chicken?
Curry chicken.
Okay. Okay. DJ or live band?
Live bands. Live bands. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I had to throw this one in because it's kind of a inside joke between Roger and I. Oh,
I know
okay.
where this is going.
Uh, McDonald's French fries or Burger King's French fries?
McDonald's.
Okay.
McDonald's for
I
sure.
got one more. Oh, Roger. But hold on. Do you eat grits? Do you eat grits?
No. No.
Okay, I'm glad I asked. I'm not even gonna ask my last question. It was a good one, but you don't eat grits. Never mind. It's very controversial, so I'm gonna save it for someone who likes grits.
All right. Though I will try it. I will try it. If I ever get the opportunity, I will try it. But I've not done it
Roger,
yet.
you haven't tried grits?
No.
Okay. Okay. Next time we get together, we have to have you try grits.
Done.
It's a food group in itself, as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the best inventions that has come about in millennia.
Okay.
Okay.
I will hold you to that then.
Okay. Okay. So to kick off this interview, just again, we want to learn more about you. So tell us, what was young Roger like? Like a lot of us know Roger now, and especially from Toastmasters world. What was
Mhm.
young Roger like? Tell us your background, family, anything.
Yeah, young Roger was very quiet, and I know a lot of you would be surprised to hear that, but he was very shy, very quiet. I've often talked about this, even in speeches, that I was often the kid in the corner of the classroom, way in the back, hoping that the teacher would never call my name because I would go up and literally freeze when I went to the front of the room, couldn't finish a sentence. So oftentimes that was who young Roger was. And I was into sports a lot. So I would dive into my sports and let my the actions that I was doing on the field or on the track or on the diamond do the speaking for me. That was who I was.
Okay. Okay. So where do you fall in the family lineup? Because I know you're not an only child, correct?
No, I've got a brother and a sister, an older, both of them are younger, so I'm the oldest.
I did not know that. Okay, so we both have that in common. I am also the oldest.
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, so you're quiet. So did your brothers and sisters get to run all over you a little bit?
Well, if you know anything about, well, you probably do, but just in the Caribbean family, I would take the trouble. I would be the one that took most of the trouble for anything that went wrong with them. My mom had this one rule that if anybody gets into trouble, everybody better get in there and help them, or else we all will get in trouble when we got home. So oftentimes that was one of the main rules that we had. I had to make sure that they were okay. There were times when, hey, listen, I did things and my siblings had to come running and jumping in for me. So it was always that way with all of us.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I was taking the rap for anybody.
That was my mom's rule.
You're
That
a good
was it.
sibling. So that is interesting that you said you were the quiet student. You were the one that did not want to get called on or anything like that. So that leads me to ask, what made you get involved in public speaking?
Rokita, that's a long-winded question or answer for that particular question. So bear with me. Uh, like I said, the young Roger was very quiet. When I probably reached my end of high school and into college, obviously I started to open up a little bit more. I got into modeling, and that helped tremendously. Plus, also, again, at that stage, I was lifting more weights. Everybody else was doing it, so I started lifting weights. So I started to feel a little bit more confident in myself. So throughout college, I started to build that that belief that I can speak and be comfortable, feeling good about myself. And then when my parents, obviously they had this business running for many years, when I finally joined the company and subsequently took over, I realized very quickly that that young boy, that little boy, was starting to come back and rearing its ugly head into that particular part of my journey, because now I had to go into executives' offices and present, or even if I had meetings, and when I had them in front of me, I would get nervous. And there was this one particular moment when I walked into a brand new supervisor's office of one of the companies that we had been with for a long time, and didn't realize that he was an introvert, and I'd never experienced anybody like that. So when I tried to have a conversation with him, which was for about 5 minutes, it felt like 5 hours because I didn't know what to say. And that was the turning point for me to realize that, yes, you may be able to be comfortable speaking to people that you know, but now you got to be able to be comfortable speaking to people that you don't know, and learning how to strike up a conversation at anywhere, anytime, and not feel intimidated. And that was the pretty much the genesis of why I got into Toastmasters, and wanting to learn how to speak better.
See, that's interesting. I have a similar story. That is
Mhm.
what made me join Toastmasters as well. It was because of work.
Mm,
I
yeah.
was I wouldn't say I was shy, but I wasn't totally comfortable
Right.
talking in front of a group of people like that.
Mhm.
And I had a position, I have a marketing background. So as I started getting promoted higher and higher in corporate, and I was like, I can't hide behind my team anymore. And one day when I felt like I kind of fumbled leading a meeting, I immediately said, okay, I need to join Toastmasters. I could not
Mhm.
even remember where I had heard of it. I knew I'd heard of it somewhere though along my life's
Mhm.
journey. So I did the same
Right.
thing as you. I said, I need to start speaking with more clarity. So that made me join Toastmasters as well. So I get it.
I, di- I didn't even know what Toastmasters was at that time. I just looked up. I looked it up and I said, "Let me see any place that would teach you public speaking," and that came up right at the top. And so I just called the number for the local branch that was here, asked them when they had their meeting. They told me, and I showed up that next Wednesday. And the rest is history, as they say.
Love it. And we're still in. We're both
Yeah.
still there.
Yep. 12 years later, I'm still in it. Jeez. Yep.
So I know when I joined Toastmasters, I had no ambitions whatsoever of competing in speech contests. I didn't even really know at the time that they did speech contests. But as I kept progressing in Toastmasters, I think after being in it for a year or so, I did start competing. I joined a speech contest and I placed second, but it was an awesome experience.
Hmm.
What made you start competing in speech contests?
So when I first got into Toastmasters and I did my very first speech, for those who don't know anything about Toastmasters, it's called the icebreaker. And basically, it's just a speech that you deliver to talk about yourself, all about you. And when I finished that speech, I sat down and there was a gentleman to my left who was watching me the entire time, just stoic. And when he came over, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "You know what? You will be a champion one day. I could feel it." And I laughed hysterically at him because I knew, just like you, I came there for a different reason, just to feel comfortable in small settings, going into executive meetings. this is the reason why I wanted to join Toastmasters. Had no idea about speech contests or anything like that. But the more I went up and I did speeches, the more he kept on looking at me and doing this. And as a person who grew up in sports and is very competitive by nature, him doing that fueled me to say that, yes, maybe I can do this. And so that was the start of me competing. So I think I started a year later in competitions, and I absolutely sucked. I did. I thought that all the fame of doing my speech in my club and getting best speaker every single week or every time I went up was, it got to my head and I said, oh, yeah, I could do this. This is easy. It's completely different. Completely different.
It is completely different. I would agree. Sometimes it can be, what's the word I'm looking for? It's jarring, almost, the difference when you're
Mhm.
just doing your speeches because you're trying to get better as a speaker overall versus when you actually start competing. And
Mhm.
also because some of those people, they've been competing for probably multiple times over years, so they're familiar with that whole speech competition environment. So when you're
Mhm.
coming in as a new person thinking it's one thing and you quickly see it's a little bit different, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, okay. But this is a good
I,
segue, Roger. This leads me
Yeah,
to my next.
let me say one thing. Let me say one thing really quickly. That fueled me, though. You see, that's what it was for me. That fueled me because those individuals who were constantly winning before, I didn't look at it in a way like some people would turn around, and I've seen this even today in my club. You see somebody who's very proficient, and you start to get nervous and say, "Well, I don't think I want to compete. I don't. They're going to win. They're going to win all the time." For me, it was the opposite. I used that as fuel and I started taking bits and pieces of those individuals who were winning and see what it is that I can get better at each time I went up and started speaking in the club to get better for the competition.
Oh wow, so I love that. That speaks to two different types of people: the people that do get totally intimidated when they have to come up against other people who they know what they're doing in a speech contest, they've been doing it so long, versus someone like you who that is going to jazz you to keep going, to keep on competing. I think that probably was my story too. I just knew I wasn't going to stop. I was just going to have to keep getting better somehow, because obviously I was not doing something right. so, so I had to keep going. So let me ask you, when you first started competing, what was something that was a revelation to you early on? Like you said, you started taking bits and pieces of what other people were doing and figuring out how you could apply it to yourself and kind of make
Mhm.
it your own as a speaker. Or was there something else that you realized, whether it was when it comes to speech competitions as a whole, or whether it comes to creating your process for creating your speech, or
Mm.
watching other speakers, or maybe it was something somebody said to you specifically when you were competing that clicked.
Wow. So when you said that, so many memories came rushing back to me in the beginning when I first started. One of the things that I'll tell you right off the bat, I learned very quickly that it's not about me, it's about the audience. I, being in sports, it is about me. It's about me being out there. It's about me competing. It's about me winning. It's about me doing the best. It's about everyone that's watching saying, wow, he's great at what he does. And I took that same attitude thinking that it applied to being in a speech contest. And I thought that by making it all about me, that would propel me to win. And I learned very quickly from actually the person who I finally beat, and his name was Tim. And Tim said to me, you are a great speaker and you will be a great speaker one day, but you need to learn not to be a preacher and to start conversing with an audience and let them connect with you and let it be about them, because he felt that a lot of times when I talked, I was talking as if I was boisterous and I was talking down to people at the beginning because I didn't know any better. I had no idea. I thought that was what I had always seen these great speakers doing, and that's what I thought it was to be in these competitions. So he taught me that lesson very early. And then the other thing that I learned was timing. I can't, well, this whole thing about 5 to 7 minutes and you're disqualified if it's 7:30. Well, I learned that very quickly in my second year of competing, when I actually thought I had one of the best speeches that year, and it was talked about throughout the competition. And when I got to the division contest, I allowed my ego to get the best of me at the end of my speech, where I was singing. And as everybody was clapping and very happy about what I was doing, I took it to another level instead of recognizing that I'm being timed. And I went over 2 seconds. So those were some of the things that I learned really quickly. Someone said to me afterwards that you are a Toastmaster, you're not an entertainer. An entertainer loves and lives for the applause. A Toastmaster knows when to silence it.
Ooh, ooh. Now that's very powerful. An entertainer lives for the applause, and a Toastmaster knows when to silence it. But
Yeah.
Roger, you do bring up a good point, especially when you're a speaker, not even necessarily just someone competing in a speech contest, but
Mhm.
this is even more crucial in a speech contest because, like you said, you're being timed. It can be
Mhm.
so hard sometimes when the audience is so into it, you're getting all that good feedback and they're clapping, and then
Mhm.
you have to find a way to, it's like squelch it
Yep.
almost.
Yes, you do. You do. It
Because
it's it becomes a timing in your head that you say, okay, the laugh is 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's enough, and you got to move on.
you do. That's like one situation where I know we normally in speaking, we don't want to step on the audience's laughter. I know you know that, but you really can't afford to do that in a speech contest, or you will absolutely go over time. I
Yeah.
had an experience like that too. I gave a speech once in a contest. It was one contest where I did go over time. So yeah, it's Toastmasters will humble you.
It will.
Toastmasters contest
Most
will
definitely.
humble.
Most definitely, it will. It will. I've been taught so many lessons along the way from wonderful, wonderful leaders, wonderful people that I respect so much. Small things, big things, very significant things. They have taught me so much along the way, and yeah, it will humble you for sure.
You can have the best speech in the world, but you go 1 second over and it's a wrap.
And it's put away in the closet and never seen again because everybody has heard it already. And that's what is horrible about it, is when you have that beautiful speech and you can never bring it back because why? Just in my opinion, sometimes I feel like, oh, I don't know if I could bring it back because everybody already got the gist of it in that moment. So that's what I hate.
You know what's interesting? I've seen Toastmasters compete, and I've seen them use the same competition speech 2 or 3 times. I've
Hmm.
seen them do it. I don't know if you've seen that. I've seen it.
Yes, I have. And it loses a little bit of the luster every time it's said because you've heard it before, so you know where the punchlines are, you know where the what the message will be, and even if they change it or alter it a little bit, you still have heard the majority of that speech, so it doesn't hit you like a new speech does. Unless, of course, we're talking about something else, which it's completely different keynote speeches that we work on
Mhm.
and stuff. But those ones there, I think, especially when it's in a 5 to 7 minute competition, the impact that you have on every line, every laughing moment, every sorrowful moment, every emotional moment, all of that things. Once that's said and done, it's so hard to bring it back again and do it the following year, the same speech.
It's very hard. It's hard. I agree. When I've heard it before, it's just not the same as when I first heard it in the contest. Like I am going to laugh a little bit, but it probably won't be that belly laugh I had the first time.
Yeah.
I think when competitors do that, I think that their rationale is there will be Toastmasters here who have not heard it before.
Mhm.
I don't want to go off on a tangent. I just had
Yeah.
to bring that up. I know I've
Yeah.
heard some of them do the same speeches years in a row. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree.
So let me ask you. Speaking of giving all these speeches, by the time you have made it to the big stage, Roger, the World Championship of Public Speaking, there
Hmm.
are multiple speeches that have been given. I think like three or four speeches by that
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
How do you come up with your speech topics? Like, do you mostly like to think about family situations, or is it a lot of times just something that comes out the blue, just those funny life situations that most people can relate to, or do you have a process for that? I'm curious.
Yeah, great question, Rokita. I think everybody has a different way of developing their speeches, and no one way is the wrong way. For me, it's always about the story first, finding a personal story that I have learned a lesson from in my life. When people often say to me, "Well, I don't know where to start. Where do I begin?" I often tell them, "Look, start with the stories of your life." And the problem with that, and I've said this oftentimes too, is people are afraid to talk about the things that got them upset, mad, hurt, or embarrassed. And so those are the stories that they'll always throw in the back of their mind, take the key, lock it, and throw away the key because they don't want anybody else to hear those stories. Or more importantly, they don't want to remember it themselves. However, those are the stories that oftentimes I will use to deliver a speech with because there is always going to be one person in that room who is either going through it or knows somebody who's going through the same situation or has gone through it. And oftentimes, when they hear that someone else has been able to get through it, it helps them, it ignites them to say, well, if somebody else can do it, maybe I can as well. So I don't hide away from sharing those embarrassing or funny stories like that. Those ones for me are the give the biggest impact to an audience.
I love that you said that those life moments, those stories from our lives that made us mad or especially embarrassed. You have to be when you are competing or when you are a speaker, period. I think that you do have to be willing to have those vulnerable moments with the
Yes.
audience. And we have to remember, even though someone may not have had that exact experience that we did, we've all had those embarrassing moments.
Right.
Especially, let me say this, if you were in a humorous contest for Toastmasters, that I think those embarrassing moments you had in your
They
life,
work.
they make the best material for a humorous contest because you wanted to fall through the floor at the time that it happened in your real life. You were ashamed about it, but maybe
Yes.
because time has passed a little bit, you
Hmm.
can see the funny in the situation now. So I think embarrassing situations make the best humorous speeches. And I also heard a saying recently that the worst the worst moments, it probably could be embarrassing moments too, but the worst moments that we don't want to remember make the best stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. I agree. It's all about understanding that everybody has their own stories. Everyone has their own life and has their own unique stories that they could tell. The thing that you got to remember as a speaker is simply this: your stories are personal. Your message is universal. That's it. You have stories that are personal. Everybody has it. But if you can craft a universal message that you could take away, that people can take away from your story, that they can apply to their own lives, then that's what you want to concentrate on doing, is making sure that your story has a beautiful universal message that the audience can take away and apply it in any way, shape, or form with themselves.
Okay, that's the nugget right there for our listeners. The stories are personal, but the messages are universal. The stories are personal, but the messages are universal.
There you go.
And you're so right. We may not have had the exact same experiences, but
Right.
the lessons, a lot of us have had that lesson maybe in a different form.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about your speeches, how you got into public speaking, how you got into speech competitions, how you come up with your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, because I know this is different for everyone. What is your practice routine like when you're preparing for speech competitions? Or, it may not be different. It may not be unlike when you're preparing a speech for a regular club meeting. Again, I know everyone is a different process. Uh, some people will use sticky notes. They'll put each of their ideas on, they'll stick them up on a wall and then
Mm-hmm.
group their ideas together. Some of us kind of like to get our thoughts on paper and
Mm-hmm.
then narrow it down from there. So and then actually do the practicing of it. So what is your creation or practice process like?
Well, first of all, I'll say this. I create the story. I think about the story first of all that I want to talk about. That's the first thing I do all the time, is what story is entertaining, is motivational, is inspirational, and has a great lesson that I have learned from it. Okay, so we've got this story. Okay. Now, of those stories, which story can be the most impactful in a competition? It's different from when you're in your regular weekly club meetings. You can throw anything out there pretty much. But when it comes to a competition, what will transcend from the club level and get me all the way to the World Championship of Public Speaking? And so when I find that particular story, then it comes down to crafting it in a way that allows me to have a very powerful beginning. And I always talk about this as well. I call it the 626 rule. You have 6 seconds to gain someone's attention and 26 to keep it. Now, that can vary. That could vary between at least 30 seconds. But my thing is, I want to grab the attention of the audience within 6 seconds of my speech. So I often will try and find a way in which I can start the speech with a bang, with I know they say a quote, sometimes that works, but some way I want to be able to have the audience going, oh my God, where are we going with this? If you remember my semifinal speech for the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2021, I talked about being in that car. And I created a whole scene of being right in that car, driving it and wiping the mirror while on the screen, as if I was cleaning the glass during the foggy, rainy evening. So I try to start my speeches like that. And then it's about when I'm actually writing a speech out, I don't put big paragraphs on my page. I don't do it like that. I do it in small little paragraphs. And then what I do, and I teach even my clients, to practice in non-pressure moments. Practice in non-pressure moments. So what does that mean? If you're having a shower, if you're doing the dishes, if you're sitting watching TV, if you are just relaxing, in those moments when it hits you, not when you're worried, oh my God, I got to practice. Oh my God, I got to do this. I got to get it done. No, when you just have that feeling like, you know what? I want to do it right now. Get up and do it then, because you are more susceptible to learn it quicker in that moment than you are when you're putting pressure on yourself to practice the speech. And so what I do is I'll take my speech, and each paragraph, I will learn this paragraph and I will internalize it. And I will keep on repracticing that first paragraph, repracticing that until I've got it down pat. And then I move on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And then I come back to the top and I start bringing it down. And whenever I mess up, well, then I start again. And I keep going through. So my speech is always internalized and not memorized. It's like riding a bicycle. When you first started riding a bike, you learn how to ride it. But if I took that bike away from you for a year or two, and then I gave it back to you, you'd still know how to do it because it's internal. You internalize how to do it. That's how I do my speeches, so that at any given time, if anything were to happen within that competition, I would not have to worry about forgetting a line or worry about somebody's phone going off or anything like that. And in fact, sometimes I've even used that situation to my advantage by saying, hey, tell them I'll call them back. All right. So back to what I was saying, and I would just get into it because it's here. It's internalized. Whereas you have seen, and I'm sure you have, and your listeners as well have seen, where something drops, a phone goes off, and then you're stuck there because you memorized it word for word, and you can't remember where you are. So I've been able to do it that way, and use that as my thing, practicing in non-pressure moments so it stays with me.
I love that advice. Practicing in non-pressure moments. I think a lot of us probably have been doing that for years and didn't realize we were taking your advice,
Mhm.
because I know that, for example, when I'm driving to my Toastmasters meeting and I have to give a speech, what are a lot of us probably doing in that moment? We are in our car just rattling off our speech, practicing on the way to the meeting, and other people in their
Yeah,
cars are probably looking at us wondering what we're talking about, and we're just practicing in the car. So
right.
that is great. Non-pressure moments. I want
Yeah,
to touch on what you said about distractions that will undoubtedly happen when you're competing or giving a speech in your club, because they do happen. And I love that you talked about internalizing and not memorizing. That's exactly what I tell my clients. And I
mhm,
use the exact same example that you gave there. I tell them, if you memorize, the issue is when you can't remember what the next word is that you
yeah,
wrote down, that you practice it. If you can't remember
mhm,
the exact word, you are going to go blank. And that's when you see those speakers who have that deer in the headlights look. It's usually because they were trying to go purely off of the memorization of it. They really didn't have it down pat, like
mhm,
in your soul is what
yeah,
I would call it.
yeah,
So memorization can really be a foe
mhm,
there. But when it comes to distractions, a tip I also like to give is practice when you can have a real distraction. Example, practice in front of the TV. Do that one time. Practice one of your points in front of the TV, because the TV is talking, it's going on, there's noise, and you got to push through that. Can you do that? Because something is going to happen when
yeah.
you speak for real. It's going to happen.
So what I would say, in 2 points about what you just said. Number one, oftentimes what I would do is I have my earpieces in and I have music playing while I'm saying my speech. So it
Oh,
completely is two different things going on. And how are you able to concentrate while that's happening? And even with clients who are getting prepared for their speeches, if they are in person and we're here, I'll throw music on and I'll say, keep going. Let's so that you're prepared for anything, whatever it is, you are prepared for it. The other thing is I was saying is oftentimes, even when you are practicing like that, what you were saying in the car on the way to a meeting, see, but that's still a pressure moment for some people because they know they have to be prepared for that speech that moment. I'm talking about non-pressure from way back so that you are getting yourself ready so that on that particular day, you don't need to practice. You should have it already ready to go. And even if it is that you're just giving it one more run through, it's still on a moment when you're comfortable and you're not feeling that pressure to do it. You and I, we could do that. Yeah, we're used to that. But for those who are not used to it, my suggestion would not be to do it when you know the speech is coming up in a couple of hours, because then you're constantly just like your body is nervous already, your body is tense, you're not ready for just being relaxed in that moment. So try to do it even before that.
I love that. I think non-pressure moments is solid advice, period, to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, because our mind can play tricks on us.
Oh yes, definitely.
I am curious, when you started competing, or maybe it had been a while, you were in the competition game a good ways, maybe a few years in. Do
Mhm.
you remember some of the best and the worst advice that you had received from somebody? Like I can think of things that people have said to me along my journey of competing, but I'm curious as to what the best and worst. People mean well, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
not downing
yeah, yeah.
anyone.
No, no,
People
no,
mean
no.
well, but
Yeah,
sometimes you're like,
yeah. It's funny. I think that the way I would describe it is that everybody wants to live through your journey, especially when you're getting to those levels. When you're reaching those levels, there are many Toastmasters, many individuals who have their lane and they are in it, and then they see someone who's doing something that they would have loved to do, and they want to live through that person's journey, and that's okay. It's not a problem. But I think that sometimes you get not only advice, but I'll give an example. And then, sorry for the listeners, I'm going to have to just say it as raw as I can with this one, and I'll try to be very nice about it. But when I went to my very first World Championship of Public Speaking semifinals in 2015, I had created a speech all about my grandmother. And when I won the district, again, I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing, but everybody was telling me, okay, you got to go to all these clubs. Go to all these clubs and practice your speech everywhere, as many as you can. So I said, okay, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. So I went to as many clubs as I could to figure out what to do with my speech. And when I went, there was this one time when I was at a place, and there's a line in my speech that says, "Friends are like the stars. You don't always see them, but you know they're always there. Their sharing is caring." Right? And that was the line I had. And this guy pipes up in the crowd and he says, "I really don't like that line. I don't think it makes sense." And so I said to him, "Okay, well, what do you think?" And he said, "I think you should say friends are like peeing in your pants. Only you will feel the warmth." And I went, "What? What?" Right? And it took me back. I was shocked, for one. Number two, I said, there is no way I'm going on the world stage and saying something like that. Right. So I've always remembered that. And what I took from that moment was take advice and use a strainer. The things that you feel are good and you know in your heart of hearts works for you as a speaker, you keep it. The rest, throw it out. And that is one of the things that I learned very quickly from doing the tour, so to speak. Now, the best advice that I was given from somebody was to always remember that the audience is there for you, and for you to always try to keep them at the forefront of your mind whenever you're delivering, to use those moments when you see them. And this goes back to our other question that you just asked. Sometimes you don't expect something to happen, whether it's an emotional moment or a funny moment. Sometimes you were practicing, not prepared that somebody would laugh at a certain spot. I have learned to take those moments, and again, this is internalizing. So you can do this in those moments. And I have done it where you see something that happened and you say, oh, you found that funny too, didn't you? I know. And you take you that brings the audience in more. That lets them connect with you a lot more because they feel like you're hearing them, you're seeing what's going on around you. Or in an emotional moment that you might have thought, I don't think they're going to really feel that, and then you see somebody in the audience with a tear coming down, or wiping their face, and you say, I felt the same way, just like you. Had nothing to do with my speech, but you brought it in. So those are the things that I've learned over the time. Use a strainer when it comes to the advice of others, because even though they are trying to live through you, sometimes their advice is not the greatest. Throw it out that you don't want. And to remember that the audience is first and foremost in your mind, and to remember that in those moments when you can connect with them more, do it.
Excellent advice. I don't have too much.
I know I shocked you with that one, right? I absolutely shocked you with it. But that's what he said in front of hundreds of people. And I sat there saying, no, there's no way. No way I'm saying that.
What you said, I think, is very crucial to hear, especially for someone who is a new speech competitor, because other Toastmasters, they will tell you that you got to go on your tour, as you called it. They tell you that
Mm-hmm.
you got to go practice here, go practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to go to a bunch of clubs and practice your speech. And let me just interject this. While I do think that is good advice to practice at different clubs, I do think that you do need a strategy for
Mm-hmm.
which clubs am I going to practice at, because
Mm-hmm.
that does make a difference. And I'm not just talking about clubs that have seasoned Toastmasters, because you can get some of the best advice from people who are new to speaking because they're seeing with a different lens than someone who's
Yes.
older. But I say all that to say that you need to be strategic about where you decide to practice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give an example of what I mean by that for our listeners as well. When I was in my district's humorous speech contest, this is about 9 years, like 9 years ago now, I went to practice at a club that they were very friendly. Their members were friendly, but I would not say that they were the easiest people to make laugh. If you catch my drift,
I do.
kind of like
Yeah.
they were not easy to make laugh. That was a club I needed to go practice this funny speech at. They're
Right.
going to give me some interesting advice, is how I looked at it. And the
Mm-hmm.
funny thing is, I think that was the last club that was part of my tour.
Mm-hmm.
I have been struggling with how to end my humorous speech. That was the only part I wasn't super confident in. And I kept
Mm-hmm.
trying different endings at each club that I visited. I wanted to test my endings. And there was a gentleman at this club who said to me, like, they liked my speech as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, we've heard about who you were, like with your past jobs. We've heard who you were, but he said, well, who are you now? who are you now, kind of like in your career and with everything that you've learned? I had not thought about that, and I had not heard that from anyone. I had
Mhm.
practiced this speech in front of, and you know what? That one question he said, that challenge he gave me made the difference because I
Yep.
pondered that for days when I went home, and
Yep.
that made me come up with my ending that no one had seen the ending yet because I told you I kept changing it up.
Right.
No one had seen this ending. So by the time I did it at the district, I mean, it went over like even better than I could have imagined because that one gentleman gave
Right.
me that advice at that club who I don't know if I would have went to otherwise, but because I knew they were hard to make laugh, I had to go there. So you gave excellent advice. You do need to filter the advice given to you. Everyone, especially new competitors, you have to filter the advice. People mean well, you just
Hmm.
smile and you're just like, no, like that's not going to work for me. Plus, you have to know yourself too.
Yeah.
I know there are certain things I'm just not going to do or say. That's
Right.
not going to work for me. Just like Roger
Hmm.
said, that line was not going to work for him. So I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't do that.
No, 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 no. And let me say this as well while we're talking about this really quickly. Especially as a new Toastmaster or a new speaker, wherever you are doing your speeches and you are looking for advice with regards to your speeches, be very careful because it will start to confuse you. And the worst thing that can happen is you start to second guess your own speech, especially if you've been successful with it. And that's what happened when I went out on that massive tour visiting all these clubs. Now, some speakers will say, yes, go on a whole bunch of clubs and visit everywhere. For me as a person, and again, there's no right or wrong, it depends on you as an individual. But for me, I knew that if I had gotten so much advice, I would lose out on number one, me, number two, what my story was really about and how it got here already. I got here. I made it all the way to the World Championships with to the semifinals with this speech. So clearly, something was good about it. So if I'm doing anything with this speech, it's more to tweak it, tinker it, but not overhaul it. So you don't want your brain to go crazy thinking, "Oh my God, maybe this wasn't a good speech after all."
You hit the nail on the head. You second guessing yourself is the worst thing that can happen. That's why again, you have to be strategic about how many clubs you're going to, which clubs you're going to, and the
Mhm.
information that you are taking in. Because, like you said, if you've made it that far with this speech, there was obviously something that was substantially good about this
Yeah.
speech. You're just looking for tweaks. How can
Hmm.
I make these rough spots better, as I like to
Yeah.
think about it? How can I polish them? So, yeah, listening, you can listen to the point where you have a whole new speech, and that's not good.
That's not good at all. And I got my best advice on that particular speech from someone who actually wasn't even a Toastmaster. She was just visiting and happened to hear that they were having this open house, and myself and then the evaluation champion at the time, we were going to be visiting and sharing my speech. And she happened to show up there. And her advice was actually one of the best things I had heard for that speech.
See, it's not necessarily Toastmasters, everyone, and it's not necessarily people who've been speaking a long time.
Yep.
It's not. And it's funny, sometimes a child, you may not, a child or a teenager who has no idea about public speaking, sometimes you might get interesting feedback from them too. Again, you filter things, but people, especially where they are in their life's journey, a child is going to look at things differently from an adult. So I don't know, if you want to be entertained, maybe do your speech in front of the child and see what they say.
I've done that. I've got two lovely daughters, and when I was going to the World Championship Finals, or this year or in 2021 when I was going, they're the ones that came up with the Use the screen, Dad. Use the camera as your screen. They came up
Oh,
with that because originally I was standing way back here and I was pretending to drive and I was going like this. And my daughter said, that doesn't even look right. Why don't you use the camera to your advantage? So make this the window. And that's how that was all created. Listen to them. They're
you
clear minded.
and listen, that's another tip for those of you who are competing virtually. Let your camera, your webcam actually be a part of your speech.
Yes.
Really, you can use it. Roger, I remember when you visited my club. You've spoken at two of my clubs, but
Mhm.
one of them, my club in New York, you did just that. You had your hand all in the screen. I mean, you made such good use of the virtual stage. It did not seem like you were online. It felt like you were right there with us. That's truly the mark of a good speaker, especially a virtual speaker, because
Thank you.
it didn't feel like there was a barrier there. It felt like Roger was right there in the room with us.
Yeah, and I think I learned that from the 2020 world champion Mike Carr.
Oh,
That's when we
yes.
obviously went online at that time, and many of us, including myself, had no idea what we were going to do. For the majority of us, we just stood right here still and tried to do our speeches. And it was Mike Carr. So I got to give him his props. He was the one that I would see going in the corner and looking up and acting like the child in the classroom. And he moved from side to side and said, wow, I didn't know you can actually do that. That's cool. So he's the one that I started, again, back to a point I made earlier, taking little pieces out of people that you see and trying to learn from them and saying, okay, that I can use to better myself. This, I don't need that. That's not for me. That's what I did.
Shout out to Mike Carr because I do remember that speech. A group of us did a watch party and watched the competition that year. And
Yeah.
I remember him distinctly doing that. And he brought that camera. That camera became a part of his speech. It was not just a device to showcase him.
Mm-hmm.
He used it and it was
Yeah, he used it.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just have a few more questions. We're going to wrap it up, so I'm not going to keep you here long. But I'm
Oh, that's
curious,
fine.
Roger,
We're good.
what what do you love and maybe hate? If there is anything you hate or dislike about competing, what do you love? What do you hate?
I love everything about competing. I think that when you get into it, you have to understand that it takes over you and your life. And what I mean by that is not necessarily all the other things that are going on with your life, but you have to actually put all the time and effort in it. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of being by yourself. It takes a lot of, the understanding that you'll have self doubts. All these different things will happen. But the process, I love it. I love going through that process of competing, of watching other speakers in the competition and seeing what they're doing that maybe even if I win, I could still, and that's something that people oftentimes may not do, is I'm still looking at them, my competitors, not from the perspective of, oh yeah, I think I can beat them, but looking at them and saying, ooh, I actually liked how Rokita did that. That was pretty cool. I can maybe use that another time in another speech or something else. But I'm always looking. I'm a connoisseur of learning when it comes to speaking and competing. So I would watch everyone. So the process all around, I love. There's really not many things I dislike about it, other than if you lose. I guess that's one of the things. But other than that, it's if it's taking up uh, hearing advice that you may not like or don't think is suitable, or again, that person who may be envious of what you're doing and trying to side road you, or I don't know what the saying goes, but just taking you away from your thought process and your path. Those are the things that maybe would be the only things. But overall, I've enjoyed competing at the high level. I've enjoyed it. I know that I couldn't do it by myself. There are many people that were along the road that helped me to get here, and their help, their advice, their sound advice is the reason why I am where I am, and I truly appreciate that. So it's been an overall joy.
I'm so glad to hear that. There's really nothing Roger doesn't like about it. Even the parts about having to practice, he enjoys the entire
I like
process of it.
hmm I do.
So that's reassuring for anyone who's thinking about competing and you're having some apprehension. You heard it here. Roger loves
I
the
do. I
process,
do. Oh
even though
yeah.
it can be nerve wracking. I mean, just competing in itself, being in front of people, but the
hmm
process, the journey can be a beautiful thing. It really can be. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, when you, let me ask you this, Roger, by the time you have made it to the big stage, what I've heard a lot of contestants say is that by that point in your competition journey, a lot of them have hired a speech coach to help them at that point. I remember Darren Tay, he worked with Ed Tate for his speech a few years ago, and I'm sure some other people I recently have worked with some. Was that the case for you? Did you have a speech coach that you just worked with that person to coach you? And if you did you like notice a big difference, or maybe there was a blind spot between how your speech was before when you had created versus how it came about after, how it was developed with the coach once you got to the world stage?
hmm Oh yes. First of all, I was doing all of the competitions by myself until I reached the district championship in 2015, and I had won. And then somebody had came up to me and said, well, okay, you're going to need a coach if you're going to the world championship public speaking. So I went through various individuals where I was looking for someone that could match my energy, match my style. And that's important, ladies and gentlemen. Look for someone, if you are looking for a coach, look for someone who brings out the best in you and wants to see the best version of you, not the best version of themselves. Okay. Make sure you look for a coach that is wanting to see the best version of you come out. I went through, an interview process of different people, and I landed with a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful lady by the name of Catherine McKenzie, and she started
Oh,
working with me. Yes, Catherine is phenomenal. She is my one of my best friends now. But at the time when I first started in 2015, I started working with her. Immediately, I felt a bond between us because she made me feel like I could be myself. And what she did best was she had those next set of eyes, and because her background was in teaching, some of the language that I would use, she would clean up for me and help me to develop it so it could be more powerful. And that's what I loved about her. And then when I went out there and I performed, she would study how I did my speech, where my movements were when it was in person, where I was standing. She helped me to develop the skills that I needed for that. So I had a great relationship with Catherine all the way through. And I remember there was a time when I've been to the World Championships 4 times. Um, and I remember after the third time, even Catherine was like, "Oh, maybe I'm not good enough." And I told her, "There is no way I'm leaving you. If I am going there, we are going to ride or die together." And that's the power of having a great person as your coach, that you will go to the ends of the earth because you know they are going to the ends of the earth with you. And we did that. And on my fourth try there, when I went in 2021, we were successful. But I also added onto my team, and you know this person, Craig Valentine. Craig was my coach in 2021, along with Catherine. So both of them, and Catherine comes from Craig's school, right? She comes from that tree.
We both do. That's why I said
That's right. We all do. We actually all do. But they come from that tree of Craig Valentine. So I asked him. He's a good friend of mine as well. Shout out to Craig. Shout out to Catherine. I asked Craig. Actually, I talked to Catherine. I said, okay, I know that you're always saying that I need to get another set of eyes. So what if we bring Craig in? And she's like, oh, of course, let's bring him. Yes, yes, right. So it was like a marriage made in heaven, the three of us together working on this speech. And what Craig does best and what he did best for me in this one was he was able to take, as he called it, take the fat off the steak. So he was able to trim the fat off of the steak of my speech, and anything that was not needed, we got rid of it. And we tightened it up real tight. The both speeches actually we worked on. And that's what I love about working with him. Plus, he's got him and me, we both have that same type of personality, which also was very infectious and helped in the process as well. So with the three of us working together, it was beautiful, beautiful. And I would encourage people to get one. If you can and you get to that stage, get somebody, but remember, get someone who is willing to see the very best in you and elevate it, not the best in them.
I agree with everything you just said there. It is so important to interview coaches to see what is going to be a best fit for you. It doesn't matter how highly recommended someone is, interview them. They might not be the best person for you. Just like they might be a great coach, but it's just not going to be a good fit for you.
Right.
So I highly agree with that. I stand behind that. So
Yeah.
I'm
You and I
so
are
glad. I
coaches
did
now.
not know they were your team.
Yeah, they're my team, but you and I are coaches now. We are now doing, and this is just to show how our coaches have helped us to develop our skills so that we now are the ones helping others. So I'm helping coaching individuals in competition. I'm helping out organizations now with their teams to learn how to do presentations and to develop strong presentations and skills. You're doing the same thing with your clients. And this just goes to show that when you have people in your life that are there to elevate you, to allow you to become better, then when you go out there now and start doing your thing, you're taking those pieces that they taught you and allowing it to flow through you onto your clients.
Yes. So iron sharpens iron too. Like I'm constantly surrounding myself with other coaches because what I think of it like this, that saying, it's like what got you here is not going to get you there.
That's
I
correct.
only help my clients be even better if I am also getting better as a coach. So you're right. And we have to stay surrounded by these people. What we've learned being on the other side of speakers has greatly enabled us to help other speakers, as in a coach role. So
That's right.
I agree.
That's
right. I would get a coach too, definitely. If I was, especially if I'm getting to that point past the district, it's coach mode at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very important to have another set of eyes to help you to develop those skills and take your speech to another level.
It is. We can't see everything. We need another set of eyes. You really do have to be in a humble, operate in a humble disposition. You got to let other people be able to tell you how you can make it better. Opportunities for improvement, as we like to say in Toastmasters. This is an opportunity for improvement.
There you go.
Well, we are really towards the end now, everyone. I'm going to give this last question, and it's a great segue because we've been talking about being a speaker and then being a coach. Roger is both. Let me ask you, Roger, as someone who's competed, you have made it to be the top 3. You've made it to the top 3, the World Championship of Public Speaking, which is a tremendous feat. What would be your best 3 tips, your best insights for competing successfully? Because we are in competition season now for Toastmasters. So I know this is probably what all of them are waiting to hear. What are the gems that Roger is going to give us besides all of these nuggets you've dropped so far in this hour? But maybe 3 of your top tips that you would like to give to anyone competing now.
Well, first of all, congratulations to anyone, as we are in the season of competition for Toastmasters. Congratulations for taking that first step to join your club contest. And for those who are competing this year, I number one, I wish you well. I hope that we will see you in Anaheim competing at the World Championship of Public Speaking. But here's the 3 things I will tell you, and we've touched on one of them. Make it about your audience. Make sure that your speech is about the audience, and it's not about you. Your stories are personal, but your message is universal. And I'll add to that. Allow your story to be so impactful that the audience can actually feel that they are right there with you while you are delivering your speech. I often say that your stories are the gateway to your soul and the pathway to an audience's heart. So keep that in mind. Next, don't let fear fool you. Let it refuel you to be better. Understand that you are going to have some self-doubts along the way. And you're going to have people that will be in your ear telling you things here and there and everywhere. But know who you are. Don't let the fear of what other people are saying change who you can be and what you can deliver. Let it refuel you to be the best version of you. And then finally, get a coach. Someone who will be there to be your second eyes and allow that message that you so badly want to deliver be unfolded and delivered the way you want it to be. After all, your greatness awaits. Take care.
And there you have it, folks. You heard it from Roger. Roger himself, 2021 World Championship of Public Speaking top 3 winner. Thank you so much, my friend, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. But to enlighten everyone who they may be competing or they just want to get better at speechcraft as a whole, I appreciate you just giving all of these nuggets to everyone and just sharing your story too, so we can learn more about you from your own, I don't know if the word is mishaps, your adventures.
We've had a few of those.
So we can share this with other people here. I see a couple, Felicia and Etta. Thank you for joining on here, and the people who have joined us on YouTube, LinkedIn. We thank you. I'm going to go check the comments after. I'm sure Roger will as well. I hope this was valuable for everyone. I know it was for me. Like I said, I don't ever think that I know everything. Even though I am a public speaking coach, I can still learn from someone else. And that's the beauty. Whatever your craft is, there is always room to learn. Stay hungry, stay humble, just be ready to learn from other people. And I wish everyone the best who was competing this competition season as well. I'm actually not competing this year. Sometimes you just really have to, you got to be in that space to compete as well. And I don't force it. It just, I was at first going to compete, but I was like, nah, I think I just need to sit this one out. And I'm happy to support contestants who are competing though. So I love watching the contest, and I'm going to be doing that now all the way till August, till Anaheim.
Yep. Can I give my handles just so that people can
Absolutely. How can we follow you, Roger? And if you have anything you want to promote, please do so.
Yeah, you can follow me at, if you want to reach out to me, if you want coaching, if you want any advice, if you want to learn more, you can reach me at rogercaesar.com. That's Caesar, not CEA. Caesar, rogercaesar.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn, reach out to me there, or you can follow me on Instagram. That's Caesar.empire. And I will be more than happy to take you on your journey and help you to get to where you need to go.
It should show up here on the bottom of our screen. Yeah, okay, I spelled Caesar right. RogerCaesar.com.
Yes, that's right.
RogerCaesar.com. Okay, want to make sure I had it there. Hold on, not Caesar Empire, but RogerCaesar.com.
See, rogercaesar.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Please follow Roger, stay in touch with him. And we are signing off. Thank you, everyone.
See ya, girl. Big five, high five. See you. Woo, woo, woo.